Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Waste Management Phoenix Open. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure. With first off, a look at the golf course and my modeling and key stats for TPC Scottsdale. Essentially, gonna give you guys the things to look for in players to go out there and add them to your player pool. Then afterwards, gonna translate that into some exposure with my top DFS plays in terms of cores and values, as well as my top 5 outright picks for this week. So strap on in. We got a lot to talk about here. We're gonna start it off with a look at that modeling and those key stats. TPC Scottsdale is a relatively balanced golf course. It's not one where you see all bombers towards the top, and it's not one where you're going to see all guys that are real positional towards the top either. You've had guys like Scottie Scheffler win 2 of the last 3 years, but also shorter, more positional guys like a Nick Taylor find some success there as well. And it's not just over the last 2-3 years that you've seen that. The last 10-20 year sample size has shown that exact same kind of thing. So in terms of the shots gained metrics, it's much more of a second shot golf course, as the iron play is really where you separate yourself. And when we're taking a look at specific proximity buckets, a lot of it comes from 150 to 225 yards. So over there on my modeling, in terms of the weighting, it is especially focused on that portion of the board. So over here on the right, of course, for my Patreon members, that is all uncensored, but just know that in that middle to long iron range, there's going to be a little bit higher when it comes to that weighting. Off the tee, it's a balanced course, as I mentioned before. Off the tee in general is really what we're looking at over the last 24 rounds, but I'm adding in some driving distance over the last 24, and overall, their career baseline in terms of apex height. And this isn't so much when it comes to the off the tee, but apex height is an off the tee stat that they go out there and measure, and it gives us an idea of some of the higher ball flight players, which really why we're looking at that is the firm nature of some of these greens. They've had a drought in this area for the last 2-3 months, and while I've heard a few people say that the course looks soft, by the time we get to Thursday, I have a feeling that that is going to change a bit. So if it's going to play as firm as some people are calling for, apex height could be real advantageous for stopping the ball on those firmer greens. Your putting, we're looking at some POA overseed. That would be in terms of your career baseline, but also looking at regular putting stats over the last 24 and 12 rounds, looking at par 5 scoring over the last 24 rounds as well. A little bit of around the green, not that much, as it's not really the most correlated to success. You don't want guys that are missing a bunch of greens in your player pool. And then with our comp courses, I've got TPC Sawgrass, the PGA West Stadium course, which played firmer this year, might be what we have out here for the waste management, and then TPC Summerlin as well, which is a desert style golf course, which tends to play a little bit firmer and faster. Not so much firm and fast around TPC Sawgrass, but a lot of the same kind of strategy involved as what you have at this event. So hopefully it gives you guys an idea of the sort of things that we're looking for in players. And coincidentally, a lot of the stats that I've included here come from Bet the Number, which, if you guys don't know, is the partner and supporter sponsor of a lot of these different pieces of content that we're doing. Apex height, for example, was straight from their model. That's why I went out there and included it this year. Things like the par 5 scoring, some of the comp courses, all brought over from the Bet the Number site. So make sure to check them out there for all that modeling. But now let's turn that into some of our exposure this week. So up here towards the top, we've got Scottie Scheffler as our first play, and he's the only guy that we're going to talk up here that I don't have as an outright bet. So I'm not going to take him at the 2.5 to 1 or whatever he is, just way too short of odds. And I've got my eye on some longer shots at a week like this, but in DFS, I don't know how you don't play him. He's going to be extremely popular. That's maybe the one thing working against him, but his course history here in the iron play last week leaves us really no reason to keep him out of contention. So in terms of course history, it's pretty much speaks for itself. The last 4 years, his worst finish is a T7. Did miss the cut back in 2020, but that feels an entirety ago back there 5 years ago. And then third place last year was seemingly his floor. So in terms of DFS, was an optimal play 4 of the last 5 years, and is the sort of player that, even though he looked a little rusty last week, still finished T10 despite maybe having his C game at best, and was number 1 in the field in shots gained approach. First competitive event back, and in a strong field event. It was a signature field. You're not talking about an event like this that doesn't have all the world's best players playing. He went out there in that sort of field and was the best iron player over the 4 rounds. So just very impressed by what we saw from Scottie Scheffler. I wish he would have been just a little bit better out there for our DFS lineups, but at this style golf course, I'm not hopping off the train. He projects much better than all the other players in the field. In fact, guys like Hideki JT are there in that 83 to like 85 point range. Scottie Scheffler is almost 20 points higher than both of those sort of players. So he's number 2 in the total model ranking this week. I'll give you a number 1 that is Sepp Straka because of his recent form. But if you look at a lot of the longer term stuff, it actually does favor Sepp Straka, which just shows you how crazy good of golf he's been playing. But if we take that out to the last 32 rounds, it goes back to with Scottie Scheffler. And of course, anything longer than 32 rounds also favors the big guy Scottie up top. So at $12,000, you are also having to pay quite a hefty price tag to get to him. But when his floor feels like a top 5 finish at this sort of event, it makes it really hard to get off of him. And really, the X factor that made him like a for sure core play for me, a lot of it would have came down to ownership on most weeks. But with the firm conditions cited by some of the meteorologists, it feels like he's an even better play, because at major championships, when that short game tends to matter a little bit more, you always see him up there in that top 3 or even winning those sort of events. So at 12 grand, I'm going to be using him out there in plenty of lineups, but not the sort of guy that I'm going to go out there and bet outright. So I'll make that clear right off the bat. At 2.5, 3 to 1, there's just no chance I'm going to go out there and add him to the card. But maybe if he drifts to like 5 to 7 to 10 to 1 at any point this week, it might be a time to buy some Scottie Scheffler, particularly if the shots gained metrics look favorable in terms of his approach. Our first outright bet, though, in our second core play is going to be Hideki Matsuyama at $10,200. He's had pretty decent course history over the last 5 years, but what people will forget, especially if you're newer to DFS, is that he's won this event twice and did it in back-to-back years about 10 years ago. So over the last 5 years, he's made the cut every single time. Worst finish was the T42 in 2021, and he had a T8 there in 2022, and then another top 16 finish there in 2020. So like I said, if you look at the last 5 years, it just looks decent, not all that great. You know, if you don't look at the long-term stuff, you don't know that he's a multiple-time champion here. And we're getting a Hideki Matsuyama in some of the best form that we've seen for quite some time. Obviously went out there and got the win at the Century, just on fire to start 2025 at a course that he's won multiple times. So it'll come down to health. Hopefully he's 100% out there this week. There's just no way to know with Hideki ahead of time. So you got to deal with the mental headache of a potential withdrawal, of him going out there just not having his best stuff because of a tight back. But when he has it for the 4 rounds, he's virtually unbeatable when he's in this sort of form. So at $10,200, he'll certainly be making his way into my lineups. And just to show you why I like him so much, off the tee has been okay over the last 24 rounds, but one of the best iron players that we have in the entire world. So gaining across all 4 categories is the kind of consistency that we love to see. And if we take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, he's gaining in 3 of the 4 categories. Now, off the tee can be a little bit touch and go when it comes to his health, but when he's out there healthy, swinging it 100%, he's usually gaining a half a stroke to a stroke per round in that category. And with the thin air this week, also the warm air out there in the desert, the ball tends to travel a little bit further. And something to add on top of that is, for somebody that has back issues, that kind of weather, being out there in those warm temperatures, is massive for somebody that's in that kind of situation. So I like the health for Hideki. I love the form. I like the course history that we have around here. And I took him at 15 to 1, which was what I was able to get over there at Hard Rock Bet. But a majority of your big books like DraftKings, FanDuel, a lot of those other major names around the industry are going to have him at plus 1,600. So play him at wherever you can get the best number. That is always going to be my advice. Just want to give you guys the full transparency on what I was able to play myself. So he's the largest bet that I went out there and placed this week. Really the only short odds guy that I'm going out there and playing. And Scottie scares me, right? It's why I'm going with a lot more long shots on a week like this. But the one guy I'm taking at a short number would be Hideki because of that elite tier course history. Before we go through our rest of our plays, some of the core plays in our 3 values down towards the bottom, we have multiple over 100 to 1 that we're taking in the outright card. I want to remind you where you guys can find these spreadsheets. Of course, on here, I have all my projections, not just for the 5 or 6 guys that we talk up here in the videos. So if you want my custom modeling, all the projections for everyone this week, make sure to check out the link in the description of the video. That's my Patreon page on there for $15 a month. You get access to all the main slate sheets out there on the PGA Tour, as well as showdown for rounds 2 through 4. So on there, of course, I've got my entire 150 max pool, all the outright bets, top 5s, top 10s I end up getting to, as well as the entire projection sheet. So if you've been wondering how to find these, that's exactly how you do so. Make sure to check it out down below. But our next core play and our last guy, that's $8,000 plus is going to be Luke Clanton at 8,300. You guys know that I'm close to the guy. He's one of my favorite players that you have out here on tour as well. But at 66-1 to go out there and win, it felt disrespectful for a course that sets up well for him. If we're getting the firm and fast course that you would expect with the weather, somebody like Luke Clanton that has that high ball flight, that's an extremely long player off the tee, is going to have the exact kind of skill set that we're hoping for. And he's the kind of guy that's been hit or miss, right? He's had a few events where he hasn't had his best stuff, but when he is firing on all cylinders, which you've seen more often than not when he's played in professional events, and I can't tell you how impressive that is, right? This guy normally looks all world when he's out here on the PGA Tour. It's a top 5, top 10 almost every single time. So it's 66-1. I know betting an amateur seems crazy, but he's that high pedigree of a player. If you take a look at his top 5 percentage, it's higher than every other player on the tour. It's a small sample size, but his top 10 rate is up there with guys like a Scottie Scheffler or Rory McIlroy. And I know it's different doing it at major championships, doing it at signature events, as opposed to what we have here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, but it is mighty fine impressive for an $8,300 golfer. So just to show you the shots gained metrics recently, he's gaining a bunch of strokes off the tee, also a bunch over there with his putter. Not the best iron play over the last few rounds, but historically he's a better iron player than that. He can be a little bit hit or miss, but like over his last 24, he's gaining that 0.7 strokes off the tee still, but now he's gaining half a stroke approach per round. So the last few events have actually been a little bit of a downturn when it comes to the iron play. I would expect him to rebound at some point, and when he does, he's going to be extremely dangerous, because you're talking about one of the straightest, longest players that we have in the world, and that's at his young age right now. He's only going to get better when it comes to the off the tee. If he can become more consistent when it comes to the shots gained approach, you're talking about a prolific player. I'm not talking about like a solid PGA Tour player. I'm talking about top 5, top 10 player in the world. So not the kind of guy I would expect that from this year, maybe even next, but 2-3 years from now, mark my words, he's going to be that sort of guy. So $8,300, 66-1, might look like just crazy talk a year and a half from now. He might be like 15 to 20 to 1 at a lot of these events when he has his tour card, which, by the way, if he top 10s this week, he earns full PGA Tour status, so something to keep an eye on there as well. I also got Minwoo Lee here at $7,900, who I also played there at 66-1 to go out there and win. He's the kind of player that's been pretty decent on this POA overseeded surface, but most importantly, has started to get back into form. Towards the middle to end of 2024, he became very inconsistent. Towards the beginning, he was giving us a lot of top 20, 25s, and lately he's gone back to that. It was the fall swing over there on the DP World Tour, pretty much top 20 to every single event that he started. Last week, he looked really solid over there at Pebble Beach, and that was in a signature field, of course. And if you take a look at the form, he's been doing it very sustainably. He's gaining in 3 out of the 4 categories, mostly on approaching with the putter, which is not really what he's known for. He's much more of an off the tee and putting specialist, but the iron play lately has been carrying his game. And if you go to the last 24 measured rounds, he's gaining across all 4 stat categories. So very consistent, as I was saying before. And the thing that has become consistent for him that usually never was is that iron play. He was always very much hit or miss when it came to the irons. He'd have weeks where he'd lose 2-3 strokes to the field, and then he'd go out the next week and gain 3 or 4 strokes. It made him very unpredictable in 2024, and he missed the cut too much to go out there and want to play him a whole bunch in DFS. But with the form on the DP World Tour, with what we saw at Pebble Beach, I'm willing to be a long-term buyer. And at $7,900, he's maybe a little bit more expensive than he would have been if he didn't have that week last week, but I don't think he's going to be mega chalk. You have guys here like JJ Spawn that I think will be popular. You've got guys like JT Poston that I think that people would rather play. Heck, even Scam Young up here at $8,100. People would rather click than a Minwoo Lee. So it's still early on a Monday. Ownership projections will come out as the week goes on. Also posted over there on the Patreon page. But as long as we're getting a sub 15% owned Minwoo Lee, sub 10% would be great on somebody here at $7,900. And I'm going to be using him out there in my lineups. And at 66-1, the real X factor that made me bet him, with guys like Clan, Scottie, I want to use him because of the firm conditions. Heck, even with Hideki, when he won, the course was a little bit firmer than we've seen the last few years. Minwoo, I like the X factor when it comes to all the people, the excitement, the electricity that you get at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Minwoo embraces that. You've seen that on every tour that he's played. He's always rattling up the crowd. He likes when people are going crazy. you're going to get that this week. And there are certain players that when they get into contention here don't like that. They don't like the crowd being super drunk out there making a whole lot of noise in their swing. Zach Johnson, has that kind of reaction to it every single year. He really doesn't like playing this event. Minwoo's not going to have that reaction, right? He wants the crowd to get loud and boisterous. It's 16. You're going to see him rattle him up if he gets into contention. That's what I want with my outright bets. I don't want somebody that's going to back down. Luke Clanton strikes me the same way. I know him. I know the kind of guy that he is. He'll do that same kind of thing. He's going to love it over there at the Waste Management. You can say the same thing about Hideki. He's just not going to react to it. You've seen that over the years. That's why he's won there twice. I think mindset's important, particularly if you're trying to take somebody to win this thing, because in contention, it gets even worse there over the weekend. Next up, we got ourselves Charlie Hoffman at 110-1. So he's 7,200 over here in DFS, and he's the first of our two guys over 100-1 to win. What I like here with Charlie Hoffman is the tee to green form recently, which if you take a look at it, it's almost hard to believe. He's gone out there and he's gaining 0.9 strokes per round off the tee, nearly 0.7 strokes approach per round, and losing over a stroke per round with the putter, which is something that is gonna have to rebound at some point. And why not over here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is a course that has been very kind to him over the years. And also, if you take a look at those comp courses that we talked about before, he recently contended and almost won over there at the American Express, which was playing firmer this year, and it's going to play a lot more similar to what you see here at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And that week, he was top 5 in shots gained tee to green. So it's not just the last 12 rounds that have been super favorable for him, but that event in particular is one of the best comps I think that we have, and he nearly went out there and won that damn thing. He's the Waste Management sponsor. He gets to play here every single year, whether he deserves it because of form. He gets in because of that sponsorship exemption if he's not going to make it in, and he's made a really good use of that over the last 5 years. So down here, I don't think he'll be that popular. Like, there are other guys down here that I think it'll be closer to like 7% owned. Hoffman, I see in that like 5 to 7% range. He won't be completely overlooked because of that shots gained tee to green form, but it's also Charlie Hoffman, right? You're comparing him to guys that are just better players down here in this range, so I don't think he's going to be mega chalk by any means. While I do think guys like Minwoo might be closer to 10%, 7% is probably where I'd cap off somebody like Charlie Hoffman. So for DFS, I think he's an even better play than outright. Like, even guys like Minwoo, Luke Clanton, there's a reason why they're 66-1 to go out there and win this event. Same thing with Charlie Hoffman. There's a reason why he's 110-1 to go out there and win this thing. But at DFS, where a top 5, top 10 is good enough, right? I may add some top 5, top 10 bets to some of these value plays that we're getting to. That's where I think they're even more valuable on a week like this. So there's a really good course fit. The best form really imaginable heading into this event is why I'm playing a Charlie Hoffman. And now our last outright, we got to go way down the board, is the one that I did not understand the number on, whether it's the outright number, whether it's the DraftKings price. It's Matthew McCarty, who won the Black Desert Championship, and I know I didn't have it as one of our, comp courses over here, but just like you have at Summerlin, just like you had at the Amex, it's that desert style golf course, and sure, a lower winning score than you're probably going to have this week, but a lot of the same kind of visuals off the tee was, a wide open golf course. You don't have to be a bomber to go out here and win the Waste Management Phoenix Open, and what you've got with Matthew McCarty is a proven winner. He won 3 times on the Korn Ferry Tour to get his card. Not many guys are able to pull that off, and almost all of them that do pull it off on the Korn Ferry Tour go on to win on the PGA Tour. He didn't have to wait long for McCarty, right? He did it in his 3rd ever start professionally over there at the Black Desert Championship at $6,600. I got him at 275-1 to win. If you have him play this event 275 times, I think he might win it like 5 times. Like, that's how off I think the odds are on somebody here like McCarty. Now, the form the last few weeks has not been great. You take a look at this, he's losing about a half a shot gain per round. So, it'd be useless to take a look at the last 12 rounds. He's been horrible lately. He's missed a few cuts and he's gained a bunch of strokes out there with the putter. But the ball striking is typically a lot better than what we've seen lately. And because he's had some time to try to regroup, kind of figure out what's going on, if he goes out there and he's half decent with the ball striking, which I've got to say, for a player like him, you'd expect that to return. Like, he's normally been much, much better with the iron play than what we've seen lately. If he putts to that 1.5, 2 shots gained baseline that he's had for the last 3 weeks, he's been putting that well out there on tour. I mean, that's contention right there. He's just got to hit the ball better than what he's done lately. And it's $6,600, 275 to 1. It just made no sense to me. This is the kind of guy that you've seen win at every single level that he's played at. And he's down here with other guys that have won before out there on tour. But McCarty, we don't really know that much about. He might just be much better than what we know about. Like Luke Clanton, I see some long-term really good talent, some high pedigree out there with him. For all we know, the jury's still out here in Matt McCarty. He might be a top 25 player in the world, right? He won his third ever start ever. That is something that you can't bat an eye at. Sure, Jake Knapp did the same thing last year, then kind of fell off, but there are examples of guys doing that and then turning into special players out here on the PGA Tour. It'd be one thing if he was $7,500. It'd be one thing if he was like 50 to 1 to go out there and win, but he's towards the bottom end of the pricing, which just makes no sense to me, and he's 275 to 1 to win. Just something that I couldn't pass up when I saw him there on the odds board. So, like I said with some of the other value plays, like even Hoffman at 110 to 1, the outright is just a sprinkle, right? That's not really our main use on a week like this. It's more so in DFS where I think he'll be sub 3% owned, pretty much all the leverage you could hope for down here at $6,600. And also the sort of player that opens up the salary to use a Scottie Scheffler at $12,000. You're going to have to open up the leeway to get up to that sort of player, and he gives you the salary flexibility to go out there and fit him into a lineup. So I'm going to have some guys down here. I'm going down there and sprinkling. I think a Joel Damon will be one of the popular options that people get to with the really good recent form. But don't forget about players like McCarty who have shown his pedigree to go out there and win, let alone the top 5, top 10 that we're hoping for down here in the 6K range. Alrighty guys, that's all I've got for the betting and DFS preview this week. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe so you don't miss any of the content to come. Before you hopping out of here, also go ahead and give me your winner down below for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon page. As long as they're at least 20 to 1 to go out there and win on major books, you'll be qualified to go out there and win a month on my Patreon page, which of course is where I'm posting all my projections and all my analysis over there for my paying members. But if you end up getting that winner, you'll win that access for free, which means unfortunately you can't take Scottie Scheffler, right? Like I said, at least 20 to 1. So make sure to go ahead and check on those sports books before you guess. It'll be first come, first serve. So once a player's taken once, they cannot be taken again. So best of luck out there with the giveaway, all of your exposure that you're going with this week, whether it's on DFS or over there with your outright bets. I hope you guys go out there and absolutely kill it. And let's go out there and get some run good over here for the People's Open.